I'm going to show you a hand gesture, and you're going to have to tell me or acknowledge if you know what it is and what it means, okay? So I'm going to show you this hand gesture, but don't get any bad ideas. It is Easter Sunday. I mean, really. So, here it is. It's the Vulcan greeting. Remember from Spock from Star Trek. You're thinking, Father, it's Easter Sunday. What is that about? I don't know if you knew about this, but Leonard Nimoy, the actor who portrayed Spock, he brought that gesture to the character. It was not something that was written in. And I don't know if you've ever heard him explain where it came from or the origin of that gesture. But when he was a boy growing up in New York, being a good Jew, he and his family would go to synagogue every Sabbath. And there was a part where the rabbis were going to proclaim a blessing. And you couldn't look. You had to look down and put your talit over your head. And you couldn't look because the divine aspect of God, the feminine aspect of God, was going to come down and bless the gathering, the assembly. But he peeked. He was a curious boy. He couldn't help it. He peeked. And he saw the rabbis with their hands like this in blessing over the people. And it's the shape of the letter Shin in Hebrew, which is the same letter that begins the word Shalom, which is the greeting that the Jews give to each other as a way of asking for God's peace and blessing. But he says, this was the perfect way to express a race of beings who were not really violent, but they wanted to greet each other. And it really caught on. If you go to a Star Trek convention, everybody is greeting each other like this. And I was watching an interview of Leonard Nimoy, and he was saying he would get that on the streets. People would greet him that way on the streets. And he chuckled because he said, they don't know it, but people are going around blessing each other. They're walking around blessing each other, and they don't know it. Because to him, it was a sign of blessing. And isn't that the greeting that the Vulcans give? Live long and prosper. It's a blessing. It's basically what shalom means. And so I was contemplating this because Leonard Nimoy passed away not too long ago. I was thinking about this gesture and this sign. And this idea, this amusing thing he had in his whole life after creating this character, that people were going around blessing each other without knowing. And it speaks to the goodness of the human person. In the human person, we want to bless others. We want to be a blessing to others. But for the most part, people walk around, and they do so, but maybe unintentionally or unknowing. Certainly every Trekkie who was going around doing the Vulcan symbol had no idea that in Leonard Nimoy's mind, they were blessing people. But for us on Easter Sunday especially, we recall that we are not meant to be unintentional blessings or to go around blessing people without knowing. That Jesus' resurrection has signified a transformation of the world, of its destiny. And we who are baptized, we share in that destiny. And we share in the fact that although Jesus' resurrection occurred on an historical date, the effects of the resurrection are permeating history until the end of the age. That Jesus' resurrection is moving us towards that destiny of that new heaven and the new earth that God is preparing for those who love Him. And what does it speak to of us? That just as the disciples' ideas were completely transformed by the resurrection, see, Jesus had to die. He had to allow all the different ideas and thoughts about the Messiah, about who He was, about what He was meant to do, and how He was meant to do it, he had to let all of those things die on the cross with him, so that in his resurrection, he could show his disciples really what he was about. And he was about conquering death. He was about restoring life completely. And in doing so, to share that gift of life and the ability to pass on that experience through his disciples. We heard in the first reading today from the Acts of the Apostles, we are witnesses to these things. My brothers and sisters, we live in the age of witnesses. That's what Easter means for us, that we now become witnesses. Witnesses of Jesus' resurrection, witnesses of his transformation in our own lives. Not so much that we have something special, we say, oh, how nice, this is great for me. But that in understanding that we are witnesses, that we are meant to provide that witness to the world. The disciples did not remain in that upper room. Jesus sent them out to do what? To share the good news. To share that message. So that all people would not get trapped in thinking about only this world, but as in the second reading we heard today, that they might seek that which is above. That they might seek heaven. We are now those witnesses. In our gospel today, we heard how that witness transforms, how it catches fire. Mary Magdalene arrives at the tomb, and it's empty, it's open. And what does she do? She runs right away to the disciples, and she tells them, the tomb is empty, we don't know where they've laid him. For that short distance between the tomb and the room where the disciples was, Mary Magdalene was the church. But it did not stay only with her. As soon as she told the disciples, it caught fire in their hearts, and they ran. And then they shared the report with the other disciples, and they shared that with others. And when finally Jesus appears to them, they are filled with joy. That is our existence. That's our life. To be filled with the joy of Christ, and not so much that that joy is for us, but that we might share it with others. That we might become a blessing to others. And in that blessing to share our witness. And in sharing that witness to catch other hearts on fire with paschal joy also. My brothers and sisters, we cannot say that we share in the life of Christ and not have our life changed. We can't do that. It's impossible to look at the risen Jesus and say, that's nice, Jesus, but now I'm going on with my life. Thank you very much. We can't do that. Think of those who saw him alive after watching him die. Can we think that their lives did not change completely? That Peter said, well, I'm so glad you're not dead, Jesus. I'm going back to fishing. Thank you. No! Jesus showed him that he had so much more in store. The same is true for us. The church continues to experience the joy and the strength that comes from the resurrection of Jesus. It catches our hearts on fire. And it reminds us that now we are to be the witnesses. We are to be the ones that run out into the world now and shout at the top of our lungs, Hallelujah! Jesus is risen. He is truly risen. to be a blessing to others, not unintentionally, not knowing why we are doing this, but to know deep down in our hearts that Jesus has changed us forever. And we are filled with joy. It is the age of witnesses, my brothers and sisters, and we are those witnesses. May we always have the courage and the joy to go forth to share our Paschal message. Jesus Christ, who once was dead, now lives forever. Hallelujah, hallelujah.